Your bank is offering you 7% on a fixed deposit. Another company is offering you 11% on a bond. Both are promising to pay you interest. So why would anyone settle for 7%? And more importantly, where does that extra 4% come from? Think of a bond as a loan. You are the lender. The company is the borrower. When you put money in a bank FD, the bank takes your money, lends it to others, and pays you a cut. When you buy a bond, you are cutting out the middleman and lending directly to a company. But here's the catch, with that direct relationship comes direct risk. Let's make this real. You have 1 lakh rupees. Option A, bank FD at 7% for 5 years. After 5 years, your money grows to about 1,40,000 rupees, a safe, predictable 40,000 rupees profit. Option B, a higher yield bond at 11% for 5 years. In theory, your money grows to about 1,68,000 rupees, a 68,000 rupees profit. That extra 28,000 rupees is the reason you are tempted. But here's what nobody tells you. If every bond paid 11%, everyone would buy bonds and nobody would use bank FDs. But here's the reality, the 11% bond exists because the borrower needs to offer that much to attract investors. Why? Because banks and financial institutions have already evaluated this borrower and said, this is too risky for us at 7%. The extra 4% isn't a gift, it's a warning label. Think of bonds like a ladder. At the bottom, safest, you have government bonds and bank FDs. They give you 6 to 7%. Step up and you have high-quality corporate bonds from top-rated companies. They give you 7 to 9%. Still higher up and you have lower-rated corporate and NBFC bonds. They offer 10 to 12% or even more. Here's the simple rule, if you want to lend money to this borrower, I need to pay you more because there's more risk involved. Now let's talk about who you are actually lending to. Think of it this way, would you lend 10 lakh rupees to your friend who has a stable government job, excellent income, and no debt? Of course you would. Now would you lend the same amount to someone with irregular cash flows, significant unpaid loans, and no fixed income? Probably not, unless they offered you a much higher interest rate. That's exactly how bond investing works. A large, established company with strong financials can borrow at 7 to 8%. But a smaller NBFC with high debt and irregular cash flows? They need to offer 11 to 12% to attract investors. And here's the critical part, you need to evaluate the borrower the same way a bank would. Ask yourself, does this company have stable cash flows? What is its debt-to-income ratio? Has it defaulted before? The extra 4% you are earning is compensation for taking on a borrower that others have deemed too risky. But why would an NBFC need to offer 10 to 12% when a large bank can borrow money much more cheaply? Because an NBFC often lends to borrowers who are themselves considered higher risk. Think of it this way, the bank lends to a large corporation at 9%. The NBFC lends to a small business at 18%. The NBFC pays you 11%, keeps 4% for its costs and profits, and absorbs the 2 to 3% defaults from its borrowers. That 11% you are earning? It's coming from small business owners paying 18%. Here's how the money really flows. You invest in a bond. The NBFC takes your money and lends it to hundreds of borrowers, small businesses, shopkeepers, and individuals who may not qualify for bank loans. Some borrowers pay back with interest. Some don't. The NBFC uses the cash flows to do 4 things. First, pay you your 11% interest. Second, absorb the defaults from borrowers who don't pay. Third, pay its own operating expenses, salaries, offices, technology. And fourth, hopefully make a profit. Let's say the NBFC lends at 18% to its borrowers. From that, it pays you 11%, sets aside 3% for expected defaults, spends 2% on operations, and keeps 2% as profit. Every default eats into what's available to pay you. If defaults rise from 3% to 5%, suddenly there's less money for your interest, or worse, for your principal. Platforms like Wind Wealth offer investors access to bonds issued by companies, including NBFCs, that may offer yields significantly higher than traditional bank FDs. Wind Wealth is a SEBI-registered platform offering curated corporate bond products with fixed returns typically ranging between 9 to 12%. But here's what you need to understand, Wind Wealth isn't making these companies magically safer. The underlying issuer is paying a higher interest rate because it needs to raise money at that rate. The platform curates and lists them, but the risk belongs to you. This is perhaps the most important distinction you'll ever learn in bond investing. Secured does not mean guaranteed. A secured bond means the company has pledged some assets as collateral, maybe a building, land, or a portfolio of loans. But here's what happens in a default. First, the value of those assets may have fallen. Property prices can drop 30 to 40% in a downturn. Second, legal proceedings take years, not months, years. Third, selling assets takes time, often 2 to 3 years or more in a resolution process. And fourth, recovery costs money, legal fees, valuation fees, auction costs all eat into what's left for creditors. And there's a hierarchy. Senior secured bondholders get paid first from whatever is recovered. Senior unsecured bondholders get paid next. Subordinated debt holders get paid last. If you're holding subordinated debt when a company fails, you are at the back of a very long line, and by the time they reach you, there may be nothing left. Let me tell you a story. In 2019, DHFL, Dewan Housing Finance Corporation, one of India's largest housing finance companies, defaulted. The total dues claimed against the company were approximately 87,905 crore rupees. DHFL had outstanding liabilities owed to banks, mutual funds, pension funds, FD holders, and bondholders. Nearly 15,000 crore rupees of retail investor money got stuck in DHFL's NCDs and FDs. Over 55,000 FD holders alone had claims adding up to around 5,375 crore rupees. The resolution process began. In June 2021, the NCLT approved Piramal Group's resolution plan of 34,250 crore rupees, but the total admitted claims were 87,082 crore rupees. That meant creditors would recover only about 40 to 46% of their dues overall. But here's where it gets painful: not all creditors were treated equally. Secured creditors recovered around 43 to 46%. But fixed deposit holders, mostly retail investors, including senior citizens, were only offered 23% of their claims. That means for every 1 lakh rupees a retail FD holder had invested, they got back just 23,000 rupees. And that recovery took over 2 years to materialize, from the June 2019 default to the September 2021 resolution implementation. Even then, the recovery was a mix: 14,700 crore rupees in upfront cash and 19,550 crore rupees in 10-year NCDs from the acquirer. Not exactly the safe investment they thought they were making. Then there's IL&FS, infrastructure leasing and financial services. When IL&FS collapsed in September 2018, it sent shockwaves through India's entire financial system. The group's total external debt outstanding was a staggering 99,377 crore rupees. Over 302 group entities were covered under the resolution framework. The government took the unprecedented step of superseding the entire board and appointing a new management. The resolution target was set at 61,000 crore rupees, approximately 61% of the total debt. But here's the reality: this resolution has taken over 8 years and is still ongoing. By March 2025, IL&FS had resolved 197 out of 302 entities and discharged 45,281 crore rupees. By June 2026, the total repayment reached 50,387 crore rupees, that's 82.6% of the resolution target. But remember, that's 82.6% of 61% of the total debt. In real terms, creditors have recovered only about 61% of what they were owed. And many bondholders and small investors are still waiting, 8 years later, for their money. The IL&FS case shows you something terrifying: even when a resolution is successful, it can take nearly a decade, and you may still only get back 60% of your money. Let's make this real with numbers. You have 10 lakh rupees to invest for 5 years. Government bond at 6.5% grows to 13,70,000 rupees. Nearly risk-free. So, you sleep well at night. Bank FD at 7% grows to 14 lakh rupees. Safe, insured and predictable. High-quality corporate bond at 9% grows to 15,40,000 rupees. Higher return with moderate risk. High-yield NBFC bond at 11% grows to 16,80,000 rupees. Highest return, but also the highest risk of default. That extra 2,80,000 rupees you earn on the NBFC bond compared to the FD? That's the price of risk you are being paid. Ask yourself, is it worth it? Before you invest in any bond, ask yourself these questions. 1. What is the credit rating? AAA is safest. BBB can offer 13 to 14% but with significantly higher risk. 2. Is the bond secured or unsecured? Secured means assets are pledged, but remember DHFL. 3. Where do I stand in the repayment hierarchy? Senior secured gets paid first. Subordinated debt gets paid last. 4. What is the issuer's business model? How do they generate the money to pay you? 5. Is the platform SEBI registered? Never invest through unregistered platforms. Here's what I want you to remember. 1. Higher return is always associated with higher risk. There is no free lunch in investing. 2. Secured does not mean guaranteed. Ask the investors who lost money in DHFL. 3. Understand the repayment hierarchy before you invest. 4. Never chase yield without understanding what's underneath it. That extra 4% isn't a gift, it's compensation for the risk you are taking. 5. Recovery takes time and money, sometimes decades, and often only a fraction of what you invested. So here's the question I leave you with. You are in your 30s. You have decades of investing ahead of you. Are you building your financial future on a foundation of understanding, or are you chasing yield without asking the hard questions? Because when you're 55 and planning your retirement, you won't remember the extra 4% you earned in year 1. You will remember the year you lost 40% of your capital because you didn't understand the risk. The time to understand bonds is now, before you invest, not after. Because as IL&FS and DHFL showed us, when things go wrong, recovery can take a decade, and you might never get your full money back. If this video made you think, if you realized you don't fully understand what you are investing in, then this is your moment. Your 30s are the most powerful decade for building wealth. But power without knowledge is dangerous. If you want to build real financial security, start by understanding the instruments you are putting your money into. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, in investing, if you don't understand the risk, you're not investing. You are gambling.